Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another week of the Parsha. And we find ourselves in PARSHAS VAYEISHEV, which is really our introduction into the world of Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous Yosef. And there's no coincidence, of course, that these Parshas, these portions always fall out during the time of CHANUKAH. And therefore the story of Yosef, his trials, his tribulations, his tremendous success, even in the darkest of times, when most other people would have caved in, it's very much related to the Yom Tov of CHANUKAH, which is coming upon us starting this week, starting tomorrow night, actually. And there's a beautiful piece in the Sichas Musa by Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, which ties in the whole miracle of CHANUKAH into really the miraculous existence of Yosef, how he was able to overcome the adversity that his brothers and those around him had put him through. So he begins with the question, and some of this might sound familiar from some of the other classes, but the question of the Gemara, which is my CHANUKAH, what exactly is the miracle on which CHANUKAH has been fixed? So everybody knows the famous answer that it's for the oil. But we also know, if we look at the story of CHANUKAH, there were many miracles taking place. And in reality, the miracles that were besides the oil, in many ways were much greater. The battle itself was fought with miraculous proportions. The Greeks were the strongest, most powerful army in the world, and the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, were very small in number. The Greeks were expert in the field of artillery, of guerrilla warfare, of attacking the enemy. They had all of the tricks, everything up their sleeve. And the Maccabees had really no expertise. They had no background at all in battle. The Greeks were big and they were mighty and they were strong, and the Maccabees were very scrawny, weak little people. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over the Rabbim biyad ma'atim. He gave over the many into the hands of the few. He gave over the Giborim biyad chalashim. He gave over the strong into the hands of the weak. And he provided for us a miracle of exponential proportion over here, which was the battle over there which took place on the fields. And in many ways it was much greater than the spiritual miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made of the oil. And yet we find that when the Gemara speaks about which miracle do we celebrate CHANUKAH for, it only discusses the oil. And that's really the thrust of Rav Chaim Shmulevitz's questioning in tonight's shir, is that why is it that the oil itself is so much greater in stature and proportion? Why is it that our identification of this Yom Tov of CHANUKAH, we don't think about the battle, we think about the oil. We light the menorah, which is about the oil. One day after the other, 8 glorious days, it's all about the oil. We eat latkes because of the oil. We eat jelly donuts, even though there's nothing to do with oil anymore. It's baked in the oven. But we eat the donuts to remind us of the oil. Everything revolves around the oil. And the question that we'd like to answer tonight is, what is so incredible about this one small little miracle of oil? Okay, so it lasted for 8 days. It's a miracle. But certainly to go out onto the battlefield and face the most powerful army of the generation, who were hungry for battle, for war. They destroyed any nation that got in their ways. That's certainly much greater in this world, a much greater and a bigger and a more fantastic miracle than that one little flask of oil. And he says the answer could be found in this week's Parsha. Joseph is Yosef HaTzadik. He is known as the righteous son of Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov has 12 children, his tribes, and we know that his favored wife was Rachel Imenu, his wife Rachel Rachel, and for a long time she was not meritorious to have children, and she was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and finally HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembered that which Rachel did for his sister Leah. She gave over the special signs when Leah was going down to the chuppah, when Lavan switched Rachel and Leah by the first wedding. And she didn't want to embarrass her sister, so she gave her the signs She said, when you get under the chuppah, Yaakov Avinu is going to ask you for some simanim, for some signs, so he'll know that you are the proper bride. And you're going to pretend that you're me. Because he was afraid that his father-in-law is going to switch the wives over here. So she gave over the signs to save the face of Leah. And it says, Hashem, v'yizka Hashem Elokim es Rachel. Hashem remembered Rachel, and he gave her a child. And the first of her sons is Yosef. And Yosef itself, an unusual name. Yosef means, give me more. You've just been waiting all of these years in barrenness. You're waiting for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to open up your womb and give you a child so that you can find even more favor in the eyes of your husband Yaakov, that you too will bring the tribes into this world. So she has a son, not gratitude to Hashem for having children, not a name that will signify the miracle of this life, but rather she says, Yosef, give me more, Hashem. I'm not done yet. I want more of the bracha, more of the miracle, more of your kindness in this world. And Yosef goes on to be the favorite child in the eyes of Yaakov Avinu. Came from his favorite wife. It was Ben Zekunim. It was the son of his older age. It was the one that he saw he's going to bear the mantle of the legacy of everything that I and my father, my grandfather worked for all of these decades. And therefore he loaded Yosef up with all of his Torah. He loaded him up with all of his insight, with all of his understanding, with all of his approach, his outlook on life. Yosef is going to take over the leadership responsibilities from his father Yaakov, who took it from Yitzchak, and Yitzchak from Avram. And Yosef has brothers, and we know the story. We're not going to go into all of the details. And the brothers get jealous of every dream that Yosef tells about them, where he's going to be the leader and they will bow down to him. And they decide that Yosef deserves the death penalty. We cannot have a person like this around. Which itself, it's not the topic of our conversation tonight, but the holiest of men in the world, condemning the holiest man of the generation, Yosef, next to Yaakov, condemning him to the death penalty. And so there they are, they wait for the right moment, and lo and behold, Hashem sends Yosef right into their clutches. And they say, that's it, this is the time, let's get rid of him. And therefore they decide they're going to do it. However, Reuven comes along and he says, how could we take this child and kill him? How could we do such a thing? This is the flesh and blood, this is our brother. What will our father do? We can't do it. So they throw him into the pit. And we know that that pit was filled with scorpions and with snakes. And Yosef goes from the highest of heights, next in line to the mantle of leadership of the Jewish people, favored status as the most wonderful son, wearing his ksainis pasim, his beautiful coat. He goes from the highest of heights to the lowest of the lows, being thrown by his own brothers into a pit filled with snakes and with scorpions. And he doesn't know from where is his salvation going to come at that moment. He has no idea what the plans are for the future, what is going to happen to him in his life. Who could imagine the devastation in the mind of Yosef? Who could imagine how alone and how abandoned he felt at those times? Who could imagine as he was sitting there thinking to himself, my own brothers picked me up with their hands. They threw me into this pit. They want me to die. What is going on over here? How will I lead my father's life that he's waiting for me to do? How will I lead the next generation of the Jewish people in wherever they're going to be? How will I do such a thing? And so from the highest of heights, from the most glamorous position amongst Klal Yisrael, he finds himself going down into the dumps, into the pits of destruction, of darkness, of loneliness, of hardships, of the trials and the tribulations that only the great men of every generation will have to go through. And suddenly he feels himself being pulled out of the pit. And he sees the faces of his brothers one last time. And they say, Yosef, don't get too comfortable. We just sold you as a slave. Really, you're selling me as a slave? I'm a slave. Where are you selling me to? Oh, don't worry, there's a country down there called Mitzrayim, called Egypt. They'll take care of you there. You'll wash the floors. You'll build the buildings. You'll take care of your master. Go down there. You're going to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim was the land of Memtes Shari Tuma, the 49th level of impurity. It was the antithesis of the house of Yaakov Avinu. It was a world filled with black magic. It was filled with licentiousness. It was filled with the lowest impurities that the generation had ever seen before. And you're taking Yosef HaTzadik out of the pit where he already felt life is ending. And then you tell him, well, at least we're going to let you live. You'll become a slave in the worst country that the Middle East has ever seen up until that time. How is Yosef supposed to feel? What is he supposed to think? Where is his life headed and which direction is he going right now? And as he gets onto that caravan of Yishmaelim that are taking him down to Mitzrayim, the pasuk tells us, the verse tells us the following. V'nei orchas Yishmaelim ba mi-Gilad. A caravan of Yishmaelim came from the land of Gilad. Ugmaleim noisim nachais utzeriv aloit. And their camels were carrying nachais, they were carrying spices and balsam and lotus, fine smelling fragrances, wonderful spices. Hoichim lahoir Mitzrayim, and they were going down to Egypt, and they schlepped Yosef along with them. The Torah doesn't waste any words of information that is not necessary for us to know. Whatever word is inside of, whatever letter is inside of the Torah, it is an eternal message that reverberates throughout every single generation, that if you would not have known this part of the story, you'd be missing something that is so intrinsic for our understanding of what is taking place at these moments in life. And the fact that the Torah goes out of its way to explain to us or to share with us that which the caravan of Yishmaelim was carrying, what their product was, balsam, lotus, fine-smelling fragrances. It begs the question, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu need to tell us what was in the caravan that was carrying Yosef HaTzadik down to Mitzrayim? So Rashi writes over here on this pasuk, and he says the following. He says, why lama pirsam akasav es masam? Why does the pasuk reveal to us what they were carrying? Does it matter? Yosef is being pulled out of a pit. He's getting thrown onto a caravan of Ishmaelim. He's going down to Egypt. End of story. Why does the Torah have to reveal to us, by the way, you should know that in that caravan, on the camels, they were carrying very nice smelling perfumes. Wonderful. Great. So Yosef is going down to Egypt and he's covered in perfume. What's the Torah telling us? It's coming to teach us the great reward of the righteous. When the Arabs would travel through the deserts over there, what did they normally carry in their caravans? They were carrying naphtha, gasoline, kerosene, tar, foul-smelling things. However, for Yosef HaTzadik, the righteous one that was heading off into the deepest exile of his life, in order that he shouldn't be bothered by the stench and the bad smell of what usually is in their caravans, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought him the perfume of lotus and balsam and fine-smelling things, so that Yosef shouldn't be bothered by the smell. So therefore, it was perfume. Because if it would have been naphtha, if it would have been kerosene, tar, gasoline, foul-smelling things, So then Yosef, who was coming from being condemned to death, thrown into the pit with the snakes and the scorpions, now being sold as a slave, the most royal of men being sold as a slave onto the caravan of Arabs that are going down to Mitzrayim, the worst place. He would have to smell the stench of foul-smelling things. We don't want him to be bothered by that, so we'll send him with perfume. And that makes everything better for Yosef. The misery that he is in at that moment, so, Baruch Hashem, it smells good in here at least. Okay, life's not so bad. So Chaim Shmulevitz quotes the Midrash, which these words of Rashi are based upon. And the Midrash says over the following idea. The Arabs, when they would travel in the desert, they would normally be carrying orois, foul-smelling hides, animal hides, the itron and kerosene type of stuff that doesn't smell good at all. But come and take a look, says the Midrash. See what HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared for this righteous man at that precarious time in his life. Shekim sakim malayim besamim. There were bags that were filled with perfume. Sheharuach menasheves bahem. So that when the wind would blow through those sacks of the balsam and the lotus and the perfume spices that were in there, he would be able to smell a fragrance that was so pleasant and so comforting and so dear to him. Instead of mibnei reichan shel avim, instead of the foul stench that normally would accompany such a group of camels and a caravan. And this, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, makes no sense. Why does it matter what was there for Yosef to smell? His life stunk at that time. Everything was going wrong for him. There was nothing, no light, no glimmer of hope. He was abandoned by his brothers. He was sent into exile. He was going to become a slave in the worst of our lands. Oh, it smells so good here. Baruch Hashem, everything's going to work out for the best. What does that mean? Writes of Chaim Shmulevitz, B'shas choshech ve'afei lezu. At this time of darkness, of uncertainty, where everything is blinded from him. Does it matter what he smells? Does it matter if it smells like the New York sewer system? Or it smells like a perfume store down at the outlets in Camarillo? Does it matter? It doesn't matter. It's going to help him. Okay, so it's not so bad. I'm going down, but at least I'll smell good. It's going to be able to bring him some comfort and peace of mind. Says Chaim Shmulevitz, Atmiya, this is a pellet, it's a wonder. What exactly is going on over here? However, he explains the following. And he says, at a time when the whole world was caving in around him, the carpet was pulled out from under his precious feet. He was the chosen child of Yaakov Avinu. He was spiritual royalty. Yosef is the one that eventually was going to become the king in Egypt. There was majesty in Yosef. And the whole world just dropped out from underneath him. So we would imagine that Yosef could have come to something called Yush, total despair. When you go, and it happened like this, it wasn't like it happened over time. Yes, he gave the dreams, and he saw that his brothers were a little bit unsettled by the fact that he's telling everyone he's going to be the leader and they're going to bow down to him. But it was in an instant when he came in the presence of the brothers that they took him, they ripped his coat, they threw him into the pit, and suddenly, shortly after that, they whisked him out and they threw him into the caravan to be sold as a slave. He was moving so fast. Who could handle such a thing? The traumatic experience, The psychological damage, they would say, of Joseph, the righteous man, what he went through during those times. He couldn't be a good father, a good husband. How could he ever lead the Jewish people? It's trauma at its finest. We would expect Yosef to fall in to a state of absolute misery, anxiety, yiyush, despair. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not want that to happen to Yosef, because Yosef was destined for greatness. Yosef was destined to radiate his light of his neshama into this world, to rescue not only Klal Yisrael, to rescue the entire land at that point. And from Yosef is going to be the offspring that will bring about the great nation of Klal Yisrael. So he can't fall apart. He can't sink into depression. He can't lose himself in the disparity of everything that's going on around him. So what should he do? So at this very difficult moment in Yosef's life, there's a juncture over here. He's either going down, 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 or he's going to find a way to hold on to himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was sending a message to Yosef HaTzadik. Don't think that your life is over. Don't think that it's hopeless. Don't think that there's no end in sight. Hashem imoi v'adainu tachas hashgachasa yizbarach. Rather, Yosef, you should know Hashem is with you. And you are still under my hashgacha, my divine intervention and my providence. I am not letting you go into that country, into that nation of Mitzrayim as a slave all by yourself. Don't despair and lose your trust and your faith in Hashem for even 1 second. Yes, scorpions biting at your toes and snakes wrapping themselves around your legs. It's frightening and it's scary. Getting pulled out and sent into a caravan of Yishmaelim Arabs, the enemies of the Jewish people, going down to the most enemy country in the world. Yes, it's scary. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Yosef to know, don't think that you're on your own. Ela adarabba, it's just the opposite. HaKadosh Baruch Hu malicha yad b'yad. Hashem is carrying you hand in hand. And I'm going down into Egypt together with you. I put you up and I'm the one that's taking you down, and I will be there with you every single step of the way. And therefore, reach besamim, the smell of this perfume, the lotus and the balsam and the spices that were unusually being carried at this moment by this Arab caravan, when normally they carry a stenchful thing. It was a ray of light in the darkness that Yosef was going down into. And through the fine smelling fragrance of this perfume, it opened up a portal of hope to Yosef, that that he eventually would be risen up from the lowly place that he found himself in at that moment and that juncture in his life. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, you know what the Torah is teaching us over here? It is not by chance that they had fragrance, perfume in their caravan. And it's not a waste of words that the Torah has to tell us what they were carrying, because normally they were carrying things that smelled so foul and so disgusting to the nose. It's coming as a light, a spark of light to Yosef HaTzadik to remind him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Elokim, Hashem is God. And Hashem is running the world. And it looks like it's dark. And it looks unknown. and it looks frightening and it looks scary, and you're far, far away from home, from your father's tents and from his study house and from his loving embrace. But you should know, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I am right here with you. Take a deep breath and smell what I've given you. I've given you the fragrance of hope. I've given you the perfume of trust. I have given you the sweet smelling spices of life that will remind you things are going to get better. And as a matter of fact, it's even good right now. Because I could have put you in a caravan and it would have smelled so bad as you were going down to meet your fate. And then you really would have given up hope. But I want to remind you, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I am with you every single step of the way. Says of Chaim Shmulevitz, we learn Sheneis Zeh, this miracle, this was unusual thing which took place over here. Shenase Yosef, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for Yosef. It wasn't only that he wanted to withhold the foul smell of the neft of the kerosene that normally would have been there. Rather, he wanted to cast his countenance upon Yosef. She is chazek v'yeda, so that he should strengthen himself. And he would know v'yargish, and he would feel it in his kishkis. Sha'af b'matzav zeh, that even in this very difficult time, ein hu nezav chas v'shalom, he was not abandoned, God forbid. El Hashem imay, rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with him, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves him. And that's why he prepared the most delectable of smells for him to go accompanying him down to Egypt. And therefore Yosef would learn at this crucial moment everything that he would go through in his life, and life was just about to begin. The tortures and the disappointments and the frustrations and the imprisonments and the false accusations, far away from father, from brothers, from his home, all of that he would go through. Mitaych avas Hashem heim, it all comes because Hashem loves you, Yosef. And that's what the perfume is all about. It is to remind us that in the darkest of places that a person will reach in their life, in the most unsure moments that they will ever tread, in the times when they will look around and they're not sure which direction should I go in right now. If a person will just take a deep breath and they will look around them and they will see the signs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending them, like gifts, min hashamayim, trinkets of chesed, of kindness, of compassion, of goodness, they will be able to recognize that they are never, ever alone. Even when it looks like that, and it might even feel like that, and it might seem like that. Look for the silver lining behind the cloud, and you, in fact, will find it. At the end of the tunnel, there's always a ray of light, but you have to have the vision to be able to see towards the end of that tunnel. In the most horrifying times that a person will go through, the troubling times, they should always know Hashem Ima HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with me. Hashem is holding my hand. Hashem is walking me through the valley of death, through the darkness of life, through the ups and the downs, through the pitfalls that I fell into, through the water that I have to wade through. HaKadosh Baruch Hu walks me through every single step. If only we'll see. If only we'll recognize. If only we will be able to take in the fragrance of the Rebbeinu Shalom into our lives. If we do that, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so then your life is a life of Yosef HaTzadik. Your life is a life which, even though everybody will have to go through the situations and the challenges, but a person realizes, I am not alone. In last week's Parsha, Yaakov Avinu wrestles with the Malach, with the angel of Esav. And as he's wrestling with the angel of Esav, the angel says, your name is not Yaakov anymore. Your name is Yisrael. What does Yisrael means? You wrestled with the angel of God. V'suchol, and you were able to overcome him. So the Mefarshim point out, if you're giving Yaakov a great new name over here, and you're praising him for all of his efforts that he made, so then his name should be Sucha, that you were able to overcome the battles with the angel. But that's not the name that he gets. The name that he gets is Yisrael. And Yisrael means Sarisim Elokim. You battled with the angel. Because therein lies the greatness of the person. The greatness is not always what is the outcome going to be. Will I be successful? Will I reach the zenith of my avodas Hashem? Will I overcome? Will I reach what I want to? Rather, the greatness that a Jew will find inside of themselves is the wrestling and the struggle and the effort itself. Yisrael, the name Yisrael doesn't mean you're a winner. It doesn't mean that you overcame and you beat the enemy. It means that you are wrestling with the enemy and you are engaged in the battle and you are trying your hardest. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Yosef HaTzadik, the son of Yisrael. He said, don't worry, you're going to go in there. It's going to be a fight. There's going to be a match. That woman over there, Ashes Potiphar, she's going to make your life miserable. You're going to go down into the dungeon. You're going to be there for 12 long, miserable years. But don't stop fighting the battle. Don't stop believing in me, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't stop realizing every day in your bitachon, in your trust, in the Ribbono Shel Olam, that I am holding you yad b'yad, hand in hand. I'm together with you. And just like in this moment, this crucial moment, where Yosef could have gone out of his mind, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought him the sweet-smelling fragrances of that perfume. It was a simon, it was a sign, wherever you will go into that exile there in Egypt, don't worry. You'll smell the fragrance, you'll see the perfume, you will see the tikva, the ray of hope. Everywhere that you look, you just have to know how to see it. Many years ago, in October of 2012, the East Coast was hit by something called Hurricane Sandy. Those of us living in Los Angeles, we know earthquakes, but we don't know about hurricanes. But over there, this hurricane came on the coast of New York City, and in the area of Far Rockaway, Seagate, all of those towns over there, the waters came up and they rushed through the homes, they rushed through the towns, and there were people that were killed, there were homes that were destroyed, cars that never made it. It was really, really a difficult situation for the people that lived there. In that area where the hurricane hit so hard, it happens to be that happens a densely populated area of religious Jews. And there wasn't a single person in America who didn't know somebody, at least one family, if not many families, that were badly affected by the hurricane. One of them was dear friends of ours. The wife was expecting her fourth child at the time. Business was very, very schwach, was very difficult also. They had just gotten a new house. And the house got destroyed. The water came up, I think they said, to the second story of the house. The whole house was destroyed, waterlogged, completely a mess. And on top of that, any day, she's going to give birth to a child that she can't even imagine having a child right now under these circumstances. Years before that, the husband, a very fine person, had some pain in his foot. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor looked at the foot, and they did a few little preliminary things. Everything looks like it's fine. But the pain was not going away. And he went back to the doctor, and they ran some more tests. And they found that, unfortunately, he had a tumor that was growing inside of his foot. They did a surgery. They actually did somewhat of an emergency surgery to extract a very large growing tumor from his foot. They thought that perhaps they were going to have to amputate, but it was miraculous in the end. They were able to get everything out, and they left his foot intact and his leg intact as well. Then they had to start doing chemotherapy to make sure that nothing grew back. And it was a very rigorous series of therapies and treatments. Lost his hair, lost his energy, lost his weight, he lost everything. And it took so much, because the cancer was so deep, it took so much that by the time all the treatments were done, the man was wiped, young man wiped out. After everything was said and done, they ran their test again, and they found that Baruch Hashem, they were able to remove everything, and they saw not a trace of the cancer in his foot, in his leg, anywhere in his body. It was a miracle. They had 2 daughters at the time. They wanted very, very badly to have a son. And after he got better, he asked the doctor, can I still have children? And the doctor told him, impossible. The amount of radiation and chemotherapy that you went through, it's impossible that you will ever have children again. I'm sorry. You have 2 children already. Count your blessings. Be happy with what you have. I'm sorry you don't have any boys. Enjoy your little girls. But there's nothing that we can do. You went through so much. He was a Hasidic fellow, and he was close to the Square Rebbe, who lives over there in Square Town near Monsey, New York. And he went to the Rebbe and he told him, Rebbe, I went through chemotherapy. Baruch Hashem, I'm healed. You know, my wife and I, we have 2 daughters. We would love to have a son. The doctors told us it's impossible. I can no longer have children. So the Rebbe told him, don't listen to the doctors. You'll have more children, don't worry. So he said, Rebbe, I have a son. He says, don't worry, I give you a bracha, you're going to have more children. Don't worry, everything is going to be okay. Sure enough, short time afterwards, on the bracha of the Rebbe, his wife is expecting. And the guy is so excited. It's a miracle in of itself. She's going to have a child. And he's going with the Rebbe's bracha. He's going to have a boy. He's getting ready for the bris. He's getting everything ready. And they come to the hospital, and he's thinking about that new baby boy that's going to be born. And the wife goes through labor, and it's a long, arduous labor. And finally, the baby is born. And the doctor says, Mazel Tov. It's a brand new baby girl. Excuse me? Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Take a look. How could that be? How could it be? So after the baby was born, he went back to the Rebbe in Square and he told him, Rebbe, you said I was going to have another baby. Yes, I did. But I told you I want a boy. Yes, you did. But I had a girl. He says, don't worry. The next one will be a boy. Fast forward, Hurricane Sandy, the house is destroyed. They don't have money. How are they going to pay for it? I don't even think they had all the insurance and everything worked out. His wife is on the verge of giving birth to their 4th child. And amidst everything that was going wrong in their lives at that moment, after cancer, after treatments, after financial difficulties, Hurricane Sandy, she goes into labor and the doctor says, Mazel Tov. It is a baby boy, a healthy baby boy. Says the Ribbono Shel Olam, in the darkness, when you think nothing can go right, when you think you're abandoned, you're all alone, don't forget the light, the perfume, the smell, the fragrance. I'm with you, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't leave you alone. I don't abandon you. There is a tikva, ora shel tikva, a ray of light that's always going to be in your life. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. He says, Tachlis hanesu gilu aras hapanim. The purpose of these small little miracles that a person has in their life is for Hashem to reveal Himself, and it's called a neshika me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a kiss from Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu kisses us because He loves us like a father and a mother love their children. When that child is suffering, when that child is crying, when they scrape their leg, when they got bullied in school, when they've got something going on that's hard for them to deal with, where do they run? They run into the arms and the embrace of their parents, and the parents take them in with all those tears, and they kiss them and they say, my child, I love you, don't worry. You're not going through this by yourself. I'm with you. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over the besamim, the perfume, in the caravan that would carry Yosef HaTzadik, he was kissing Yosef and he was telling him, I love you. You're not abandoned. You're not by yourself. You're not on your own. I'm with you every single step of the way. And he says over such a beautiful idea, and he says, if a father wants to show his love to his children, with what will he give them that will show his ultimate love? The things that are necessary: a bed, pajamas, a blanket to keep them warm, food on the table, a backpack for school. Will that show how much the father, the parent, loves the child? Or will it be what he calls the extra things in life? When he slips his son a sweet treat, doesn't that let the child know how much my tati, my father, loves me? When he tells his son, come, let's go, and they get in the car and they drive down to the ice cream store, and they walk in, and he says to his son, which flavors do you like? And the son says, what, Tati, for what? And the father says, because I love you. I just want you to enjoy. And the son walks out of that store with his ice cream cone, licking the flavors so joyfully. And the father's holding on to his other hand. The son knows how much my father loves me, how much he cares about me. The necessities in life we can't live without. Yes, we know that our parents take care of us. We know that they're watching over us. We know that they will give us, they will not let us drown into oblivion. But how do we know that there's such ahava, such love, unbreakable bonds of love that my parents have for me? That's when they give a little bit extra. More than that is needed, but a display of the warmth and the love and the care and the concern that a parent has for a child. The perfume in the caravan was an extra added component of Yosef's journey down into Egypt. And in that small little act of kindness from Hashem, Yosef HaTzadik knew HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me because he's kissing me and he's caressing me and he's holding my hand, and he's not letting go of me. Yes, I'm going to live. Yes, I'm going to breathe. Yes, I'm going to go down there. Yes, whatever's going to be is going to be. But the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is embracing me beyond what is natural, he's giving me an added bonus. That when I travel, not only does it not smell bad, but it smells so good because Hashem wants to kiss me to let me know that he cares and he's not leaving me alone by myself. He says, Yosef, I have nothing to worry about. My Father in heaven loves me and he will be with me every single step of the way. Says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, this is the story of Chanukah. There were many miracles that were taking place. The battles themselves were miraculous proportions. No other army in the world could have possibly defeated the Greeks under these conditions. I had a friend once who was in the US Army, and they once came in to give a class on understanding the battle plans and the strategies of all of the other armies in the world powers. So if the American army would ever have to go to battle with that country and that nation, they would know how to win. And so the general that got up went through all of the nations where there were battles and there were wars that they had documented. And Israel was not on the list. And this fellow, a Jew, is sitting there wondering, oh, they're going to say something about the Jews? And finally the general says, we figured out the battle plans and the strategies for every single army and battle under the sun. But there's one nation we cannot explain how they have won the battles and the wars that they have fought. And that is the army of the Israeli people. Because their battles are nothing less than miraculous. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the Yevonim, the Greeks, into the land of Israel, and the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees, fought back, it was nothing short of miracles. But you know what? We were promised many years before that the Torah will never leave the Jewish people. We were promised that no matter where we go in the Gullus and the exile, we will never be abandoned, we will never be lost, we will always survive. We will be chai v'kayim, we will live and we will endure forever and ever. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu owes it to us that we will survive the exile of Yavin, of the Greeks. And therefore the battles are necessity. He has to bring about the miracle of the battles. It's like the boy whose parents, they got to give him a bed and pajamas and a blanket and food on the table and a backpack and a car to get to school. They have no choice. They have to give it to him. That's what he needs. But the kiss from the Ribbono Shel Olam, which let the Jewish people at the times of Chanukah know that he never left us alone, to let us know that even in the darkness and everything that was enshrouded in mystery that was going on during that time, the Neshikas Pihu, the loving kiss and the embrace of the Ribbono Shel Olam, that was something that was above and beyond what he had to do. And that's the miracle of the oil on Chanukah. That they would find one Pach Shem in one flask, and it would still have the seal of the Kohen Gadol. And it was only enough to light for one night, but Hashem made a miracle. It lasted 8 nights. Every night was another kiss, another hug, another loving embrace, more words of encouragement to the Jewish people to tell us, don't think that I ever forgot about you. I'm with you every step of the way. I'm watching, I'm caring, I'm guiding, I'm directing, I'm making sure that you, my dear children, you will not suffer any ounce more than you need to. On the other hand, that little flickering light that you're going to see, those rays of hope, that miracle of the oil, which is an extra added bonus, that's the neshika, that's the kiss that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to the Maccabees. And it's the kiss that remains etched in our hearts and our souls for all generations. And that is what CHANUKAH and the miracles are really all about. It is a time for a Jew to recognize that even in the dark, even in the struggles, even in the hardships, even in the challenges and the tests that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts each and every one of us through, if you're sensitive to it, you can feel the soft, gentle kiss of the Ribbono Shel Olam. You can feel his hug. You can feel his embrace. But you have to look for it. It's everywhere when a person begins to look. So many things that could go wrong don't go wrong. So many things that could have made the situation worse didn't happen. So many difficulties that could have been much more difficult never got to that point. And then out of the blue, Hashem sends a ray of light, a beacon of hope, a loving kiss to each and to every one of us to remind us, I'm right here. I'm not going anyplace. And as long as you stay committed, and as long as you continue to believe in me, and as long as you bitochen, your trust in me, the Ribbono Shel Olam, that I can do anything at any time, whenever I want to, that never will fade, then open your eyes and take a look, and you'll see your Father in heaven with outstretched arms, with a warm, loving, compassionate smile, and deep, penetrating eyes, and a warm, loving kiss to wipe away the tears and the fear and the hardships that you are going through. My CHANUKAH, what is CHANUKAH all about? It's about recognizing the miracle of the oil. Because the miracle of the oil itself is the miracle that echoes through all of the generations, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling each and every one of us, no matter what situation we find ourselves in, I love you, I care about you, you mean the world to me. And I will never leave you by yourself. Hold my hand. Feel my embrace. Take pleasure in my loving kiss that I give to you. And you will always know how beloved you are in my eyes. There is an amazing CHANUKAH story that goes all the way back to the days of Yemen. And if anybody would like to document such stories, the sad stories which took place of our brethren from the country of Taiman of Yemen, wonderful religious Jews that were brought to the country of Israel in the beginning and the inception of the state, when they only wanted Jews, but they didn't want the religion to come along with them. And they tried very hard to bring in an influx of Yemenite children. Very often they would try to leave the parents behind in Yemen, and then they would indoctrinate them in the ways of irreligiosity, cutting off their payas, removing their yarmulkes, giving them lifestyles that had nothing at all to do with the religion that they had when they were young children, growing up in the safe haven of Yemen in their parents' homes. It is a tragic part of history in the development of the modern day state of Israel. It is a very sad blemish in our nation, but it is finally documented. I know myself a certain fellow from Yemen whose brother was taken away in this way when his mother was in the hospital giving birth to his brother. The doctors took the baby and they told her, "We're so sorry, miss. Your son died in child labor." She said, "Well, where is he? I would like to see him. We have to bury him." No, it's okay. We've taken him already. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. And they took that child and they gave him off to a family. It might have even not even been in Israel. They might have shipped him off to another country, that he should not grow up as a religious Jew in the footsteps of his ancestors from Yemen. Now, this story goes back to those times. And there was a man named Saju who lived in a little village in Taiman in Yemen. And he was blessed with what they called golden hands. He was a silversmith. And everything that he made, everything that he shaped and he formed was like miraculous, beautiful, magical, and majestic. And he had a wonderful business that was prospering for many, many, many years. Everybody would come, make me this trinket and make me that, candlesticks for Shabbos, make me silver earrings, silver bracelets, make it, and he could do anything that you asked for. However, lately things in Yemen had changed. And it became very difficult for him to earn his money the way that he was before. But nevertheless, it didn't shake his faith. He believed strongly in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Hashem would always take care of him and give him exactly what he needed to survive for he, his wife, and his children. One night, Saji came home to his house with amazing news. And he said over that there were some men that came to the shul. He never saw them before. And they arrived from Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And they came in this big metal bird called an airplane. And he said that they were waiting and they were ready to take people back with them to Eretz Yisrael to go and settle in the Holy Land. And Saji said, I went over to them after davening. And I asked, would it be possible for our family, it's my wife, I, and 2 sons, will we be able to come? And he said, certainly, with pleasure. So he came home and he told his wife and his children, it's time to pack up. We're going to Eretz Yisrael. The next day, as they were packing, Saji went to finish signing all the papers and getting himself prepared for the journey. And the men said, we're so sorry, Saji. There's only 2 seats left on the plane. We suggest you send your children first. You don't want to leave them here alone. We'll take care of them when they come to the land of Israel, and then there'll be another plane coming in a short amount of time, maybe in a few days, and you'll get on the next plane and you'll be reunited with your children when you get to Eretz Yisrael. Sanj and his wife had no reason not to believe these men. They seemed so honest, so ehrlich, so sincere. So he told his 2 sons, Ezra and Nehemiah, that you're going to go on the first plane. We're going to meet you in another week afterwards, and we'll be reunited in Eretz Yisrael. As they're walking to the plane, Sajid pulls out of his bag 2 wrapped ornaments. And he says to his children, Ezra and Nehemiah, you are leaving during the holiday of CHANUKAH. So I made for you last night, I stayed up and I made these 2 beautiful silver menorahs. One for you, Ezra, and one for you, Nehemiah. I want you to make sure that you always light the menorah every single Chanukah. For the light of our Torah and the light of our nation shines brightly in these lights. Please, whatever you do, never ever forget to kindle the lights of your menorah. Ezra and Nehemiah hugged their father. Tearful farewells to the father and to the mother, and they boarded the plane. When they got to Eretz Yisrael, there was a delegation of men that was waiting for them. And to their great shock and surprise, none of these men were wearing yarmulkes. None of them were wearing tzitzis. None of them were religious. And as they're getting off the plane and they're going through customs, they grabbed Ezra, they put him into one group, and they took Nehemiah, they put him into another group, and they were separated, shipped off to kibbutzim. Kibbutzim are not known for their religiosity. And when they got there, they were informed that they have to have new haircuts. These long Yemenite payas, no, they don't exist in the kibbutz. That yarmulke, who wears a yarmulke in a kibbutz? Who davens, who says brachot, who keeps Shabbat? It doesn't take place in the kibbutz. And slowly but surely, as Ezra was on his own and Nehemiah was on his own, it only took a matter of time, whether it was months or years, until they acclimated to the new style of the kibbutz life. And their religion was something of the past. Except for 8 days of the year. 8 days of the year, they would go into their closet, they would pull out their silver menorah that was crafted by their father. And as their father told them, never forget to light the candles. For the lights of Torah in our nation shine brightly in them. And after Chanukah would be over, they would wrap them back up and put them away. One year there was a major battle that was taking place. Ezra and Nehemiah were in the Israeli army. And they were fighting on the front lines. They didn't even know each other, hadn't seen each other in who knows how many years. And suddenly, one night, the commanding general makes an announcement over the loudspeaker, ceasefire, ceasefire, the war is over. The soldiers celebrated tremendously. But Ezra was so excited because tonight was the first night of Chanukah. And he wondered how would he light his menorah if he's on the battlefield. So he quickly ran to his tent and he took his little silver menorah from his father and he perched it in a small window over there in the barracks. And he lit his menorah. And as he's looking out the window, he sees to his great shock, there's another window across the way, also with a silver menorah shining bright with one candle for the first night. And he says, who is that soldier? Who else has a menorah over here on the battlefields? And he walks over to the barracks there, and he walks inside, and he looks at the menorah, and he lets out a gasp. And suddenly a young man turns to him and says, everything okay? And he says, whose menorah is that? And the young soldier says, that's mine. And Ezra says, follow me. And they walk back to his barracks. And he says, look at my menorah. And now Nehemiah gasps. And they look at each other. Ezra, Nehemiah, and they fall on each other's shoulders and they begin crying tears of joy. These two brothers found each other after all of these years. When? On Chanukah. They spoke through the night and they came to the conclusion that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu reunited them on Chanukah, when they were lighting the menorah that their father had given them so many years ago, it was a siman min hashamayim, it was a sign from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself that he wants them never to forget the meaning of the lights of the menorah. It's the light of our Torah and the light of our nation. And they said, Nehemiah, and he said, Ezra, it is time for us to return to the ways of our father and our mother. And that began their path of tshuva, of return. In the darkest of nights, in the most difficult of situations, when a person thinks they're all alone, never forget HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his chesed and his mercy and his kindness and his love. He sends us messages. He smothers us in his kisses because he loves us so much. We just have to be aware, we have to recognize, we have to be margish, we have to feel. We have to open our eyes and we have to see. just how much Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father in heaven, truly loves and he cares about us. And if that's all that we'll learn this Chanukah, if all that we'll recognize, that we open our eyes and we begin to see how he takes such good care of us and doesn't abandon us and leave us alone, and we'll feel the loving, warm embrace and that gentle kiss from Hashem, then that itself will be a miracle of outstanding proportions that we will be able to carry with us for the rest of our lives. May we be zeicha, may we merit be'ez Hashem to see those rays of light, those rays of hope, that kiss and that embrace from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to smell the sweetness of the spices, of the balsam, of the lotus, of being bathed in Hashem's perfume. And may we carry that with us today and the 8 days of Chanukah, and may it be a lesson and a message and a light of truth and of glory that carries us on the wings of the eagles, on the wings of the Shekhinah, in the embrace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every single day of our lives. Chag Sameach. We look forward to seeing you next week, Be'ez Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi Horowitz.